Hey, how's it going? How you guys doing? I really thought that was going to be a smooth transition, but I had cut on. Hey, welcome to the Live AV Tech Podcast. It's the very first one. Here we are doing this crazy stuff on YouTube. Um, I decided I wanted to do this, and well, I'm doing it. We're gonna have a little fun today. We're gonna spend some time with Jeff Pierce, TD at the Majestic Theater. We've got a panel of wacky folks over here waiting. Let's go ahead and bring those guys up. Hit the right button here. Hey, here's the wacky guys. In the top, I guess that's the left-hand corner. That's John, and I gotta get. Why is that layer there? Anyway, John, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
I've got a big old logo over your head, so that's great. Let's see here, and then below him, that's Jim Reeves. Jim, how you doing? Say hi.
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
And right next to him, we got Kurt Wright from lovely Florida.
Yep, I'm glad to be here, Mickey. Thanks for the invite.
And above him, it's Mark Milan. How you doing?
Good.
So, what do you guys think about this? You think this pandemic thing? You think it's just a fad? You think it's just going to go away? What do you think, huh?
I think it's a short-time fad, yes. I think it's going to blow over as soon as the masks become unfashionable. Usually 6 to 8 months.
I really think it's maybe something kind of like the Pet Rock or something. I'm not sure. Well, you guys are really entertaining. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here.
We got nothing else to do.
All right, I'm gonna switch back to me. You guys are boring. Let's see. That's right here. Hey, it didn't work because it's over here. Hi again. Okay, so our guest. You know, this is. I want everybody to know this is not a pretty show. This wasn't going to be a pretty show. This is backstage. This isn't out on front stage. This is backstage. We're talking on comm. We're talking in between cues. I'm not sitting on a case, but I do plan on eating flat meat later. Anyhow, our first guest of the entire show, Mr. Jeff Pierce. Jeff Pierce is a technical director at the Majestic Theater in Dallas, Texas. He began his career at 15 as a guitar tech for heavy metal bands. He was hired to his first tour at 17 and made his first international tour at 19 years old. He transitioned to freelance corporate AV about 15 years ago, also while working as a promoter rep and project manager for Live Nation on some pretty big shows. He took over at the Majestic in 2014, and he still freelances in between shows when he can. His diverse background and experience gives him a unique perspective on our industry. And let me bring him to the screen. There he is.
Doing great, Mickey. Thank you for having me.
I got to put me in there too. Hi, how you doing?
Wonderful.
Audio is the most difficult thing about this this setup. Okay. You're 15 years old. Tell us, how did you get into this crazy stuff?
There was a local band called Stepchild, and they Basically, he asked me to come out and be their roadie, and I thought that was pretty cool. Actually, what they were doing is just looking someone to carry their gear for free, and I jumped at it, and I started teaching myself things. It's one of the funny things. I have no formal training whatsoever in this industry. Everything I've learned from people just along the way, and I just kind of started picking up things and became a bass tech at first. 4 strings are easier than 6. And then went on to being a guitar technician, and just one thing led into another.
Okay. And so you got to go to Europe and have some fun, and things got a little crazy?
I don't remember a lot of it. This was back in the early '90s, and one of the rules that my boss had at the time was for me to drink 2 beers and do a line of cocaine before I touched his guitars. So there was a lot of it was a time when it was okay in the industry to partake in different just that party scene, and it was just sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and it's definitely not like that today. Obviously, today it is a very corporate environment, but back then, if you weren't partying, you were kind of an outcast.
Okay. I'm over here trying to work on that echo. So when you came back home, you decided to clean up. You joined AA. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I remember being in San Jose, California, working with this band, and we were on a tour, and we were in San Jose at the time, and I remember the guitar player for the band called me an alcoholic, and first band I ever worked for that they didn't cheat on their girlfriends, and they didn't drink, and they didn't do drugs, and they just sat around and played games in a hotel room, and it was really weird for me. And when the guitar player called me an alcoholic, I was really offended. My last drink was actually, I didn't know it was, but it was at Daryl Abbott, from the guitar player from Pantera. It was at his memorial. I didn't plan on being at my last drink, but I quit that band when he called me an alcoholic that night. I quit, flew home to Dallas, and I had some discussions with some people about going on tour with another band, and that was the band that Daryl worked for or played in, Damage Plan. And I ended up turning the gig down, and later he was murdered on stage. And I was at the Clubhouse, which was this all nude bar they owned here in Dallas, and I remember drinking, and a singer for another band, Evermore, had come up to me, and he was in recovery. Y'all know David K, and he started taking me to AA meetings, and I didn't think it was going to be my last drink. I didn't intend on it being my last drink, but it did. And when that happened, I just was looking for any job because I was, I didn't, by that time, my reputation going out on tour, it was kind of, even rock bands didn't want to hire me, because of my drug and alcohol use. So I ended up, going to AA meetings, and I just remember driving around all these different places that said audio on it and putting in applications. And one of those places happened to be AVHQ. And I put in an application, and I think it was Jim Hall gave me a call to come out and do a gig for him, and that was the start of my corporate side.
Yeah. Okay. So, in a lot of people's view, you have kind of a sweet gig with Live Nation. How did you make that connect?
Well, I've always been in music And when I wasn't on tours, I would go out and be a stagehand, and then I got into being a runner. And a runner is someone who goes out and gets the things for the bands in production, and you work very closely with the production manager and or promoter rep and the production manager, tour managers of different bands. And so I started doing that, and actually the way I got into it was my boss and one of my mentors, Davies Baird. He one time, I was always wanting to do the gig, and I had experience when I was on tours. When I wasn't messed up, I'd always get promoted to production manager, and I've tour managed a couple bands. And when one time I said, I'd really like what he had to do, and an opportunity popped up to do a festival in San Antonio. And he said, you know what? Okay, it's sink or swim time. And that bill, I remember, had Papa Roach on it, Blue Oyster Cult, Cypress Hill, and Bush. And so it was a pretty big show, and it was a 3-day festival, and it was basically just a big stage set up in the middle of a field. And I pulled it off, and with a lot of his help, and just experience from sides. And that's one of the things I really liked, is because I know how touring bands are. I know what they expect. I know what they want. I know what they're looking for. I know what they're not looking for. And so that really helped me, having toured before. And then as being on the corporate side, it gave me that little bit of professionalism that didn't come with the rock and roll side, and it taught me how to be professional, be courteous, and also very OCD and anal about the way cables are ran and safety and looking out for liabilities. And that was a big part of it in the corporate side, is learning liability and learning learning to look for problems before they happen.
And that's pretty true in just about every aspect of our industry, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that as a technical director at the Majestic, it's me and one other guy, Travis Porter, who is the senior technical director, and me and him, we split our shows, and that is one of the main things I'm always looking for is, security. In these times, man, it's shocking to say that you have to make sure that every exit, every entrance is buttoned up, on stage, making sure every light has a safety on it, because we're basically, doing a different show every single day with different people. And you have to make sure all those things are buttoned up, making sure that the power is hooked in right, making sure that every little thing, trip hazards, projecting, are they going to have people from the audience come up? I've done shows as big as Slipknot at Starplex to kiddie ballets at the Majestic. You have to think about all these different things of what your audience is, what could happen. The scariest show I ever worked it was actually the night after I did Slipknot. I did a show for a YouTube show at Southside Ballroom, and it was for a bunch of 11, 12-year-old girls, and they literally broke through the barricade, and we had to call in backup to help with the barricade. So bikers don't scare me so much. Roughnecks, cowboys, those 12-year-old girls, I'm terrified of.
Nice. Yeah, I think we're all pretty scared of 12-year-old girls. So speaking of the Majestic, what prompted you to quit freelance and go for a full-time job? What kind of life thing is that?
Well, I had the opportunity. I started doing more and more stuff with Live Nation, and I made a deal with the GM of the Majestic that I could still be allowed to freelance on my off time as long as my job at the Majestic, was handled. And I'm basically able now to work pretty much full time with Live Nation and full time with the Majestic, even though I'm still a 1099 on and with the Majestic, and then I got the taxes wise where I'm freelance and
right.
So anyways, I basically the travel with the freelance, because I was spending a week in Washington D.C. doing a convention. You're there for if it's a 5-day convention, you're there for 8 days, setting up and striking. And then then I'm flying to California, then I'm flying back to Florida, and it was just, I was always gone. And at that time, I just had a young son, and then we found out not too long after that, my wife was pregnant with my daughter. So I thought I met the business manager for the Majestic one night when I was doing a motor rep show, comedy show at the Majestic, and she said that there was going to be a job opening. And I just for grins, I put in an application, and they hired me. And I never expected to stay there. I always had kind of one foot out the door. But I'm a very spiritual person, and I prayed about it every day. And for some reason, I just never quit or got fired. And it is a tough gig. It's very demanding. You're in charge of a lot of aspects in the protection of a historical theater. Not to mention the fact that there's a lot of advanced work going on. And it being city, it's even a little more strenuous because we have certain things that we have to also abide by the city. So you're not only dealing with promoters, but you're also dealing with the audience, and you're dealing
Security.
with security. And that was one of my things, is I'm in charge of security at the Majestic as far as buttoning things up. So that there's a lot of things that come in play to that. And when I first started at the Majestic, it was very hard to buy things, and it still is, but the funny thing about us is we're a rental hall, we're a four-wall rental with full production. So we have a PA in there, we have lights in there, so you can literally go there and do a show very reasonably. And we work for the Office of Arts and Culture, so our job, people that come into the Majestic don't have to have a lot of money, because my salary is paid for by the city, so they're just having to hire our labor, and that's it. That we have a 4 minimal guy labor pool, which consists of a light guy, an audio guy, a head carpenter, and a secondary carpenter.
And the guys there are all pretty much union, right?
Well, that's where it gets into weird city stuff. We do not hire the union. We actually hire a company called IAPP, who won the contract. It's bidded out every so often, and I don't know how many years. I think it's every few years or whatever. And they bid it out. So anybody who has a labor company is entitled to go in and bid this for the city. And IAPP has won the contract the last few times. And they are, they turn around and hire the union. So technically, it is a union crew there, but it's not we do not hire a union, and we're not, we kind of go by union rules and safety regulations, but it's not union to whereas we go as far as saying we have a dark stage, or our lighting guy can't pick up an audio snake or something like that. And
so in other words, it's not Chicago.
It's not Chicago. It's or California, and the truck loaders can come in and work his hands. And that's one of the things that helps us do that, because there are venues in Dallas that hire the union and then they go strictly by union rules, such as the music hall. They're pretty strict about their stuff, and they have their rules, but we're kind of under a different category, and we do have our 4 guys who are our regulars, and it took a while to build that team. And 2 of them were there when I got there, which is Mark, our carpenter, and Grant, our light guy. But we've gone through several audio engineers. For a while, we were having trouble, and I've had to jump behind the audio board myself. One of the things with my experiences is I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm a master of none. I can jump in and run audio in a pinch. I can jump in and run audio in a pinch. I'm good at troubleshooting. And I think that's what really makes a good TD is the fact that I know all this and I know what things to look for, but I certainly don't put myself in and qualify myself as a master audio engineer, especially when my best friends, work for Iron Maiden and Jay-Z and bands that when I see what they do, I'm like, nope, not even close,
Yeah. And that kind of, what you've been speaking to kind of covers the question I was going to ask about how life is different from freelance corporate AV in the theater world. Seems like you tend to wear a few more hats than typical TD in a ballroom show, right?
Definitely so. It's more, I would say, a production manager gig. When I travel for Live Nation and I go to different theaters around the country, I don't even see the TDs half the time. Half the time they advance to shows, they're not even there. We are definitely quite a bit more hands-on. I'm on stage. I'm making sure things are done right. Not that I don't have complete faith in our crew, because we have one of the best crews in the nation. I don't like to tell them that personally because I want them to keep working hard. But we really have one of the best crews in the nation, and I'm really proud of the team that we put together there. We had Sterling Winfield for a while on audio, who is one of my buddies who used to tour with Pantera and record all those bands. And he left, and we ended up getting Graham St. Clair from the Kessler. And I mean, our team is impeccable, and we work really well together. They help each other out. And you got to wear a different hat for what's going on. Sometimes we'll have a play come in, and it's a different vibe than the rock crowd. And then we've had corporate shows there where I just saw Mr. John Bentley not too long ago. And, and then that's kind of a different hat, you got to wear on the corporate side. And you got to know how to just handle the different types of people, from the corporate CEO, the assistant to the president who's worried about losing her job and she's trying to maintain everything. And that we've all seen 1,000 times. To the rock guys that come in, and the Majestic's one of those theaters to where you're either on your way up or you're on your way down with the bands. And with the exception of every once in a while someone going out and doing an intimate theater crowd. But for the most part, that's what you see. So you get a lot of people who are new in their careers that you got to be empathetic to and say, okay, this is they're not used to doing a bunch of shows, and you got to handhold them and show them the ways to do things. And then you got a lot of guys that are older and just disgruntled and grumpy, and they used to play, in Reunion Arena. I'm not going to say American Airlines Center, but they used to play these places, and they come in and they're grumpy and they're pissed, and they want you to know that. I like to project a fun atmosphere. I believe if you're not having fun at work, then what is the point? That doesn't mean that I'm not professional, and safety always comes first. But I like to have a good time. I want everybody to be happy. I believe that if you're not happy in doing what you're doing, then you should move on to something else. And it served me well.
That's good. And as far as I can tell, You seem pretty happy at what you're doing.
At times, yes, and I am. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are those times that we've had some very frustrating shows in there, and you know, and that goes with anything. But I knock on wood, have not ever had a show fail. You know, um, I've gone through everything that you can imagine. So one of the things I had the opportunity when I first started getting into promoter repping is I worked for a gentleman, and we would do most of the B and C markets. So I was running arenas and amphitheaters out in Lubbock and San Antonio and Corpus, and and these are people that don't have um, the personnel to keep on full time. So these are people who work at, you know, Target, and then they come out and they do their second job, and the arenas aren't buttoned down, you know, and stuff like that. So when I when I go to the Majestic and they're like, oh yeah, well this happened or this, I'm just like, this is nothing, and you know, this that's not a problem. This was a problem, you know, dealing with this biker gang or dealing with this that we can get through that.
Yeah,
You know?
getting the craft table of with the right kind of salad dressings on it.
Well, yeah, you know, and we've all worked for AV companies that are less than solid, that don't bring out the right gear, and you're trying to Frankenstein stuff, and we've had to make the show happen with, you know, Scotch tape and whatever else we could find. So it prepares you for that, and the corporate side of it makes it to where rock and roll is very messy with their cables. And corporate is so, you know, let's do right angles and make sure things are. So I do a combination of that. And I believe that being organized and learning that on the corporate side has really helped me to troubleshoot, you know, I mean, because people don't think about that when you're about to troubleshoot a problem and you got a big spaghetti, you know, of cables, you know, and you're just like, you know, if you just ran these neat, you wouldn't have this issue, or you can replace it quickly. You know,
Right. We've only got time to do this twice once.
Exactly. And, you know, and it was a transition to go to a theater, because rock and roll and theaters, or even AV, the terminology they use for the same exact thing is totally different. And
that was another question pertaining to the difference between, you know, theater and corporate. You have to learn a lot about cable or not cable, but rope and lines and various things like that.
I didn't know what a line set was before I worked at the Majestic. I didn't know what soft goods were. I didn't know different terminology they used, and you know, and a lot of it was just trying to keep my humility and say that, hey, look, just like anybody, I'm teachable, you know. And I'd have to go up to the guys and say, listen, guys, I come from a different genre, so please help me. You know, don't embarrass me in front of the client, but pull me aside and tell me, hey, guys, you know, this is the way we do it in the theater. And you know, it is. I joke like that, but that is the persona, you know. When our guys, our crew, who I love dearly, are sitting around in a group, it's hard for me to conversate with them sometimes, because they're just so damn smart. You know, they're talking about books and Dungeons and Dragons and pronunciations and blah blah blah. You know, and then I come up and say, yeah, remember the time when you're in London and you got drunk? And you know, and they're like, no, I don't. You know, so it's a totally different crowd. The theater crowd is, you know, that world. It is, you know, and it used to bother me too. And I hate saying this, but they're almost too safe sometimes, you know. And I'm like, well, let's just get up here and get this done. Let me just climb up the truss and do something real quick. And they're like, oh no, let's get the lift out. And then I'm just like, oh Lord, help us, you know. So, you know, when you have a rock and roll crew, you know, back when I was doing rock and roll, you know, if there was a light that went out, we would climb up the pick, you know, right before the show crawl across with no hardware, and safety harnesses and fix a light and then slide down the pit. It's just what we did,
Yeah.
It's not
Risking
like
a life for a light.
Yeah, man, that's what we did. And, and there's not too many of us around anymore either, but it's just a totally different world, and it's learning to adapt to that, because like I said, one day I'll literally be running a rock and roll show somewhere, and then I'll go down to the Chesapeake Arena down in Oklahoma, do a big show down there, where I'm in charge of hundreds of people, and then the next day I'm at the Majestic, and it's doing, who knows what, and it does vary there from show to show, and it's very diverse, and you really have to read your clients, and kind of figure out, and that's usually what I do during the advanced process, is I kind of feel people out and I can see where they're at professionally, just with different terminology they use, and just kind of know if they know what they're doing, or if it's going to be a show, and then that way I can warn our guys ahead of time, because a lot of people that don't do shows a lot, they'll pop up and they just think everything's just there ready to go, and you're like, no, that's not the way it works.
Nothing's there unless you make it get there.
Exactly.
So you're going between the theater and Live Nation and doing all this stuff, and you got kids and a wife. How are you balancing your life that way? How are you trying to keep things together, family wise, business wise, and the theater wise?
Well, I'm very lucky because, like, at the Majestic, I'm required to get 40 hours a week, and I can do 40 hours sometimes in 3 days there, or 2 days. And this is over a 2-week period. I got to get 80 hours in. So, there's some days that I'll work 4 days. The other good thing about the city is they give you tons of time off. I mean, just tons. You get tons of holiday pay, tons of sick time. I literally can't use it up quick enough. And so I'm able to take my sick days and go on and I don't go on vacation, I go work. My wife is very supportive of that, and and it's just like doing your corporate stuff. Sometimes you're busy, but sometimes you're not. So, it might be, honey, I'm not going to see a lot of you and the kids this month, but next month, or next week, you're going to be sick of me and want to get me out of the house.
Right. Maximize the time you have.
Exactly. So, and I'm very blessed that I have a wife who understands that and works with me on that, So, it can be very difficult at times, because there are a lot of times that I'm literally going from Live Nation to Majestic back to Live Nation, and there's times when I'm doing six shows in a row, and they're all in 3 of them will be in different cities. So I'm flying, I'm learning to sleep on planes, and I get 2 hours here and an hour here, and it's been a something to learn how to manage, but I like it. This time off right now is been crazy, because my emails aren't going off, my phone's not going off. I'm used to being extremely busy and advancing shows and doing all these things, and it's like now I'm like, okay, what do I do today? Which I think we're all getting into, but I don't see that lasting too much longer, hopefully.
I understand. I'm gonna go ahead and bring in the panel now. Let me make sure I know what I'm doing here, and we'll go to the 2-shot, and that's everybody right there. And blammo, there's everybody. Hey, these guys.
I've worked with
guys,
every
what
one
kind
of
of
them.
questions do you have for Jeff?
I actually have a question for you, Jeff. It's really good to see you. It's been quite some time.
Hi, Jimmy.
And I was going to say, since you're working with the city, and you kind of have your finger on the pulse of when we might start seeing scheduled shows again, as far as from your perspective as a venue.
Well, as of right now, it's been kind of up in the air. There, a lot of people are booking shows, but they're ready to move them at any moment. I currently have, like, for Live Nation, I have a show booked in August 16th in New Orleans at the Sanger, which is a city building for New Orleans. And as of right now, it's still a go, but that could change at any moment, and that's what we're seeing a lot of. But one of my hopefuls is I've been furloughed, and our date to come back is August 1st. So they furloughed us a couple weeks ago, and my date coming back is August 1st. So we're hoping that that's going to be when we're going to start advancing again. What I'm seeing in the news is the state Republican convention is they're still planning on having that in July in Houston. It's either June or July. I believe it's July 17th or June 17th. Trump is saying that they're going to have he's demanding that we have the 50,000 people in an arena for the convention. So I don't see how the government entities can have 16,000 people at the state convention and 50,000 people at the national convention, and then tell concerts that we can't do it. They're saying that we can do 25% occupancy now, and we've done movies at the Majestic, so we can do 25% occupancy at the Majestic easily. It's a 1,700 seat venue, and we can easily do movies. It's figuring out how. No one knows how to do this stuff, and my personal opinion is either open it up or don't, because people are using the same entrances, people are using the same concession stands, people are, I don't care if you're doing one-way aisles and have a hand sanitization set up every 5 feet. If you have that many people around, they've said, and that's one of the other things we don't know. The doctors keep changing stuff. One day it's 9 feet for Flint, the next day it's 39 feet, of a droplet. So, but
I say let's call it 2 Stratocaster lengths. That's what I say.
Yeah, but I do know, we're talking with all my friends to do all the bigger tours. Those are not coming back till the fall of next year. Most of those have been put the arena tours to people that can afford, but they've talked about doing more intimate shows for some of these bigger artists at smaller venues like the Majestic or the Bomb Factory or the Music Factory or Southside Ballroom, and doing more intimate shows for these larger audiences, or excuse me, for larger artists, and doing a higher ticket price to have a more intimate show with them. And there's been discussion of that. I think once the states start pulling this stuff with the convention centers, then the people that are worried about liabilities are going to start going for it, but
Right.
I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I agree with you there that part of it has to do with the government deciding what they're going to actually do.
Yeah, I think everybody's afraid to make that first move, and it seems to me like the Republican National Convention's doing it for us. It seems like they are going out and saying, we're going to have the state convention, we're going to have the national convention, and and I don't care what anybody's politics are or anything like that, and I don't ever talk about my politics, but what I do know is that these people are going to have a convention, so it's either going to be disastrous or it's going to say, let's open up the concerts.
Right. Exactly. My feelings exactly. Well, I wanted your opinion on it, and I wanted to know, see if you had any kind of timeline. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, who else?
So you said the Majestic doesn't have an event planned until August right now? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we have to go off of city guidelines. We have stuff tentatively booked. Yeah, so we even have a couple movies booked that are in-house, and we do have shows that are booked, but a lot of the booking agents are tentatively booking things, knowing that they could change at any moment. This is a new thing for everybody. I mean, the day before, I was supposed to be doing Ben Rector at the Majestic, and then I was supposed to fly and do Ali Wong in San Antonio and in New Orleans in three straight shows, and then go back and do a show at the Majestic. And like that day, just everything stopped. I mean, it was the night of Ben Rector. I got the phone call at 3 in the morning that show was going to be postponed. You know, so, and people are very careful about their wording, whether a show has been canceled or postponed, and I really think that people want to get back out. They're doing these drive-in concerts and stuff, but I mean, that's just not the same thing as going with your buddies and, going to your first, rock show and, doing all the silly things you do.
Yeah, it's difficult to get an FM transmitter right now.
Yeah, and we actually, there's been a few people that I know in the business that have thought I hadn't actually got them, so there's a few people I know that are prepared to do these things, and but it's I don't know, and this is just my opinion. I think it's silly to go watch a concert in a car. I'll just put in a CD. That's just my opinion. But, I think people are just wanting to get out of the house no matter what the reason is,
Exactly. Mark, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess, I think we're talking about a lot of things that people are curious about, but I kind of want to bring it back to what we were talking about earlier with Jeff and your sort of career path. I remember hiring you back in the day as a breakout lead and running breakouts for me. And then from there progressed as you started doing more Live Nation stuff, brought you on as a stage manager for some of the bigger productions at American Airlines. And it was such a shock to me. The last time I saw you, you brought me in for a show at the Majestic. You had some tickets available and you're like, hey, do you want to come see this comedian? So you brought me in and I watched you backstage, and to see the transition that you made from who you were that I knew you 2-3 years before to that level that you were running that show there. I don't know if you've ever really even thought about it, but maybe can you just think about that? Like, what was that progression for you to go to that level and to execute on such a high level?
It's been a back and forth in my career, because there were shows that I would do when I was on tour before I met you that I was in charge. And then, and then in the corporate world, I'd come in and be a breakout lead. And that taught me a lot about organization, and running different multiple things for a bunch of clients that are less than nice, and dealing with doctors who we all know press reverse on the thing. But,
On the pickle?
Yeah, on the pickle. And, and I do think about that, and I sometimes do think about that and go, well, one day I was a stagehand. One day I was doing breakout leads. And then I was, stage managing, I got to stage manage for George Bush. I'll never forget that. That was so cool in a corporate show, and then to me, doing the rock and roll stuff is something I've always kind of done and stage managed. And then rolling over to actually being the guy that's in charge. I never really wanted to be that boss. I wanted to be like the assistant to my boss. And Davies, my boss, gave me that opportunity, and I loved it. I absolutely love doing shows, and it's been a hard road because I've had to learn a lot of things in that, and because a lot of stuff is monkey see, monkey do, and I'm not saying just towards Davies, but you see these production managers, and I've kind of had to learn my own road on how to handle crews and how to handle, I never had to fire people because they showed up to work drunk or because they're wearing their biker patch on, and dealing with all the diplomats of just diplomacy of trying to, do that, but I do remember I was doing a show not too long ago, and I'm standing on the side of the stage and I was watching it, and I just went, wow, sixth grade Jeff would have really, I think it was Slayer. I was running the Slayer show at the Music Factory, and I was just like, wow, middle school Jeff would have just not believed this, and that it has been that progression, and you just kind of take it on, and I think when you love what you do, and you learn, and it's hard sometimes to learn that you can't have everybody be your friends. I know all of y'all have been in those positions, to where you have to put your work first, and do business over being the guy that everybody likes, and that was hard at first because you want everybody to like you, and then you learn that you can't be that guy. You have to be the guy that makes sure that the show runs safely and professionally, and hopefully you got some people that you can deal with, that still like you at the end of the day. But um, I do. That is interesting that you said that, Mark. And I remember seeing you at Edge Fest, and stuff like that, and it's just been the progression of things. But I've always kind of been in both worlds, even when I was in corporate. I worked in corporate when it was busy, and then in the summers when it was dead, I went to rock and roll, and I've always just maintained that thing to where I've done both sides. And I've always done that thing to where I'll jump in any position, whether it be, an A1 on small shows and A2 on the bigger shows. And one thing I never do is lie about my qualifications, just because that has got so many people. I've seen so many people get in trouble over that over the years, that says that they can go in and do something and just fail. And a lot of you guys are the ones that taught me that, Mickey's taught me how to run audio. I didn't know how to run audio, but I bullshitted my way through it,
And I bullshitted my way through teaching you.
So, I think, everything I've learned has been from learning from people like y'all, and just learning different aspects, and taking what I like and leaving what I don't like, and I don't want to be the grumpy guy. I want to be the happy guy. I just want the shows to always go off and be a success. And one of the things that's so great, and I think Troy Bashesky used to always say this, and he'd be like, it's only 3 more days of this, and then you get a new show. It's only 2 more days of it, Jeff. It's only 1 more day, Jeff. And that's what it is. These people are going to be long and gone in 24 hours, and then I'll deal with the next lot of either lovely people or less than lovely people.
Yeah, I remember early on when I first got to know you, you were mainly doing sets and strikes. I always asked you, why don't you want to operate shows? Why don't you want to be in there operating? And you always tell me, I can do three different setups and strikes a day. I'm making twice as much money as you are.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's one of the things at the Majestic, because I work at the Majestic and Live Nation, and my salaries were almost equal for the year, So, I end up, making a pretty good living and having time off and having time to, I still have 3 weeks of vacation time at the Majestic at any time. It's insane. And,
Fun stuff.
I kept saying that I always kept saying that I was going to leave there, and I've never got my office totally decorated or anything, because I always wanted my bosses to know that I'm ready to go at any time, But I do. I like it there, and now, I mean, I'm getting to the age, for so many years, it was all about just the partying and doing the shows, and now it's like, okay, you got kids, what about a pension? What about, insurance? And what about this, and those are things I didn't think of before, and when you're doing freelance work, I was always scared. I always had work, but if someone didn't call me for a week, which we all know happens sometimes, I thought that everybody hated me and my life and my career was over, you know? And I don't know if y'all have those same fears, but that was my fear, you know? Not Jimmy,
I think
but
we all have that fear right now.
and that's the thing, and it was just, and I still do corporate stuff, it's a lot harder because they want me for 3 or 4 days and I have to turn down a lot of gigs. Whereas with Live Nation, I go out and do one show one night, or sometimes they'll send me on, like I'll go do a show and do, Dallas, Oklahoma, Houston, and Arkansas, but that's the most I travel now. It's 3, 4 days, man, and it's great, and it's great having a home base. And I never really had a real job, so it's been interesting, but I've been blessed where my boss is very hands off, and he lets me and the other TD do what we need to do, and he trusts us, and so it's almost like doing freelance work. It's just your gigs are booked for you.
I got a real good question for Jeff. Hey Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Hey, we worked together March 6th. We did the TEDx, and that was the last day I worked. I haven't worked since.
Wow.
Do you feel sorry for me?
I felt sorry for you before that, John. But
I think we all
yeah,
feel sorry for you now.
I'll be honest with you. It's funny because I'm seeing, I feel very blessed that our government is taking care of the freelance workers, because usually we're the ones that get screwed,
Right.
And I'm seeing the hands that our crew that worked for us at the Majestic, they're honestly making more money than they ever had, and we were talking about bringing them back a couple days a week at one point and try to think of stuff for them to do. And we have plenty of stuff for them to do. And they're like, shit, we're making more money than we ever had, and so that's, I know that's going to stop, but, I think, so actually, no, I envy you, John. You get to sit at home and make money. That's a pretty good deal. But I know we are all anxious to get back to work. I know each and every one of you, and I know we're all workaholics, or we like doing what we do, and we're ready to get back to it.
Hey, what color Escalade did you finally buy?
That'd be a white one.
See,
Yeah.
no one knows that. That's what we
Yeah.
want to know.
Well, I had a Tesla, and I traded it in. And and speaking of that, that was one of the cool things is, we were talking about the progression of where I was, Mark. I started out as a stagehand I'm sorry, guys. I started out many years ago as a stagehand, and I've had stagehands for upstage here in town, and they'll come up and they'll be like, God, Jeff, I you used to be one of us, and now you're driving a Tesla, and I'm like, yeah, and you too can do that,
Right.
I believe that hard work, and I think that's the only thing is I was always willing to do whatever it takes, and I would always try to work harder than the guy next to me,
Exactly.
and usually it was Valentino, and that's a hard-working son of a bitch. So, you better be working your ass off, you
Yep.
know. So I've been very lucky to work around the best professionals in this industry, and become friends with them, and it is even it's a brotherhood. I really believe that, and we all have each other's backs, and we all look out for each other, and and that's a really cool thing.
Oh, I agree. And I was giving you a hard time, but you're really, I've seen where you've come to. I was going along with what Mark was saying, but man, to see you in charge at the Majestic for the TEDx show, and it went flawless. see you in action. I'm proud of you, brother.
Well, thank you. I'm a badass. No, I'm just kidding. No, I firmly believe it's the team that you put together. I really do. And for a while there at the Majestic, we had some people that were not in a position that they should have been in, and there's a few people around town that definitely do not like me because I've put the right people in the right positions and put a good team in place, and now we get a lot of compliments from touring artists and from the artists themselves that says, wow, you made everything just great. And I believe that all my experience from doing the rock and roll to doing the corporate and, getting all that experience, I've been on the touring side, I've been on the 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 building side now, and I've been the production manager. So having all three of those sides makes me aware of what I know, what tours want when they come in. I know what they're looking for, what they're not looking for. I know what, when I go to other places, I know what not to say to those building guys that would piss me off, if someone came in and did something, and I know from the touring side that those guys, man, they're on a bus for, and they just traveled 8 hours from doing their last show. And I don't know if y'all have ever slept on tour buses, but for me, man, I have a hard time sleeping on tour buses. And, and they are a little grumpy, and it's their home away from home. And that's the way I try to treat it, whether it's in whatever, whether I'm production manager for Live Nation or the at the Majestic. I want them to have a home away from home and feel like that they can relax, do a good show, and know that everything's taken care of, and they can go take a nap on their bus,
And Jeff, you're still an honorary union member in San Francisco.
Yeah, a Teamster.
The Teamsters, that's it. Yeah, still an honorary Teamster.
Yeah, that's a funny story. Mickey, he had his computer thrown in there. Y'all might not believe this, but sometimes I can be a little harsh on loadouts, telling people what to do.
I don't believe it at all.
And I ended up jumping in the truck with the Teamsters loading, and they were like, "God damn, Jeff, we're making you an honorary Teamster." And it might have had a lot to do that I was yelling at the IATSE guys that they didn't like either. And that's the input that I remember asking Mickey later, and Mickey goes, "Well, you were a little barky," and I was like, and that's what you get these inputs from other people, and then you look at it, and it's important, I believe in constructive criticism, but we loaded this entire semi, and I'm jumping in just helping out because I'm pissed, and and Mickey goes, "Where's my computer? I got to go straight to Vegas." And I go, "Where'd you put it?" And he goes, "Well, right there." I go, "Right next to all the other stuff we were packing?" And then the Teamsters just looked at it and said, "We're not unloading this truck."
Wow.
But that was a good time. I forgot about that. And that's another thing is, having that experience of dealing with, the Teamsters and the IATSEs and Baltimore, who I love, and Chicago that excuse me. In Chicago, that's it. That's all I had to say. And dealing with different, locals has taught me how to, because that's one thing about the Majestic. We have theater shows come in that are almost all union, or and they call them green cards. And then you have other shows that come in that, they're like, what are the rules? Because there are places, that are just dark stage, and we don't have that there, and I just really now try to, being on all those different sides of the spectrum, try to make it as an easy day as possible for my client, whoever that may be, and Mickey's, and he's seen me work a lot there, and that is my goal, and I also believe in being nice to everybody, because you don't know who your boss is going to be tomorrow. You know,
Absolutely.
and and that means the stagehands to everybody, because everybody is capable of growing and learning and doing, and I'm always willing to teach whoever whatever I can, and y'all have all taught me things, and Jimmy was my boss for years. Mark, same thing, Mickey, all these people have taught me these things, and and it's sometimes crazy. Like I work a show with one AEG guy, and he also works at Southside Ballroom. And one day I'll be his boss, and the next day he'll be my boss. So you got to really learn to be nice to everybody, because it can burn you.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, this thing did exactly what I thought it was going to do. It went overtime. I knew we were going to just want to keep talking, and it's a beautiful thing. I really, really appreciate you coming and doing this thing, being the first guinea pig. I appreciate all you guys for coming out and helping me out with this thing. It's been a lot of fun. Jeff, I think if we could do a big digital group hug, I think we'd do that at this point. But I do really appreciate you coming out. And lovely time, guys. Lovely time. But it's really kind of time to settle this thing down. So I'm going to hit this button here that does that. And then I hit this button here. Okay, and here I am. So, Sunday, we're going to do this thing again Sunday. Sunday night, 7 o'clock. It's going to be Sean Rockefeller. He founded, along with a partner, Data Display down in Houston. They did a lot of very interesting work in the past. They grew up through the whole basic development of audiovisual through the last couple of decades. Very interesting conversation, I'm sure. You're not going to want to miss it. It's Sunday at 7 o'clock. So there's like a little button down there that says subscribe. If you just click on the subscribe button, and then there's another one that says notifications. Click on that thing. It'll tell you about the next upcoming event. And plus, I'll be just sending as many emails and texts and whatever to try and hammer the people to come and watch this thing, because it's interesting and it's important. I think people can learn things from the experience of other people who have done this stuff, and that's what we want to share. These experiences. There's a lot of channels that are training how to use technology and how to do things and how to work this piece of gear. I wanted to show something that helped us learn how to operate this thing and make a better workplace up here. So these guys were great for this, and I'm really looking forward to moving forward with this and doing this every Thursday and Sunday at 7 o'clock. Hit the subscribe button, notification button, and thank you very much for watching. And I'm going to learn how to speak. And have a great night. Thank you. And I'm going to hit this button that says it's the closing slate. And I'm going to play a closing music.